There is a moment in every conflict where the enemy collapses before you ever lay a hand on them. Not because you struck first, not because you were stronger, but because you shattered the idea they had of themselves. A man falls when his frame breaks, not the body, the identity. Destroy that, and the rest obeys gravity. This is the quiet art of dominance. The strategy Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology discovered the same truth. The enemy is defeated the moment he doubts his own position. Today, we speak of the strategy that makes enemies collapse. Attack the foundation, not the front, because the front is a mask, and the foundation is the truth. If you strike the mask, you entertain him. If you strike the foundation, you end him. Most people never understand this. They fight the part that is visible, the insult, the tone, the posture, the raised voice. They exhaust themselves wrestling with symptoms instead of the structure beneath them. A strategist sees deeper. He does not respond to the noise. He studies the belief behind the noise, the internal frame the enemy is standing on. Every person, strong or weak, builds a psychological platform, a set of assumptions that tells them, I am right. I am strong. I cannot be pushed. I will win this exchange. Break this private script, and you break the man. This is why arguing is useless. Arguments confirm the enemy's frame. If you raise your voice, you acknowledge his challenge. If you defend yourself, you validate his accusation. If you try to prove anything, you accept the bait. At that moment, he stands on firm ground because you stepped into his arena. The strategic path is the opposite. You refuse entrance. You ignore the invitation. You let the door close in silence. When he expects emotion, you offer stillness. When he tries to provoke, you make no movement. When he seeks validation, you starve the desire. And this is where the collapse begins. Humans are addicted to predictable reactions. They survive on the responses they expect from others. When reality does not match expectation, stress rises. When stress rises, confidence fades. When confidence fades, the frame begins to crack. Imagine a man trying to dominate you with raised volume, dramatic body language, or some attempt to corner you into emotional engagement. He is certain you will react. He built his entire strategy on that certainty. It is his foundation, but you don't react. You stay exactly where you are internally and externally. You reply calmly, or you don't reply at all. You don't match his tempo. You don't acknowledge his power. In that moment, something inside him shifts. He expected to lead the rhythm. He expected you to play the role he scripted. You denied the script. This denial is not passive. It is psychological warfare. Your silence forces him inward. Now he is no longer focused on attacking you. He is questioning himself. Why isn't this working? Why doesn't he react? What does he know that I don't? Do I look foolish right now? His aggression turns into uncertainty. Uncertainty turns into hesitation. Hesitation turns into insecurity. And insecurity collapses the frame he was standing on. This is why indifference is more powerful than confrontation. Confrontation is a conversation. Indifference is a verdict. You are telling him without words that his weapons do not reach you. His tactics do not influence you. His emotional storms do not touch your world. And the moment he realizes this, even quietly, he loses his center of gravity. He begins compensating. He talks more. He explains more. He repeats himself. He becomes louder, more animated, more desperate, trying to recover the authority he thought he had. But the crowd sees the truth. Every extra word he speaks shows weakness. Every exaggerated gesture shows insecurity. Every attempt to control you shows that he already failed. Meanwhile, your stillness becomes the anchor in the room. People gravitate toward the calm force, not the chaotic one. This collapse is not dramatic. It is subtle. It unfolds inside him long before the outside shows it. You did not overpower him. You dissolved the structure he depended on. A man collapses when he has nothing solid to stand on. Strip away his assumptions, and he stands on air. When he stands on air, every move becomes unstable, and instability is the birth of defeat. This is the heart of Lesson 1. Do not fight the noise of a man. Fight the confidence behind it. Break the foundation, and the front will fall on its own. Remember this, and you will never waste strength again. A collapsing enemy is not pushed. He is allowed to fall. Strength is not measured by force. It is measured by frame, the invisible structure that governs how you interpret the world and how the world interprets you. The man with the stronger frame dictates reality. The one with the weaker frame becomes a character inside it. A frame is not a speech. It is not a gesture. It is not a performance. It is the unspoken law you carry when you walk into a room. Most people don't have one. They borrow the frame of whoever intimidates them, impresses them, or pressures them. They bend as soon as someone questions them. They shrink the moment someone challenges their identity. This is why they collapse. Their core is made of opinions, not principles. A strategist cannot operate this way. Your power comes from the frame you refuse to surrender. When your frame is stronger than the enemy's, you do not need to compete with him. He competes with himself. Your stillness becomes a mirror that exposes every insecurity he hoped to hide. A strong frame has 3 characteristics. It is cold. It is simple. It is absolute. Cold, you don't decorate it with emotion. Simple, you don't clutter it with explanations. Absolute, you don't negotiate it to win approval. When you hold such a frame, you appear unshakable even when the world trembles. People sense it. And more importantly, your enemies sense it. This is why you do not need to shout. This is why you do not need to threaten. This is why you do not need to push. The man who needs theatrics has already lost control of the interaction. The man who needs to prove his dominance is already insecure about it. Strength that must be displayed is not strength, it is marketing. True authority is quiet. It announces itself by refusing to move. Consider how people react under pressure. When someone challenges them, they rush to justify themselves. They apologize. They over-explain. They scramble to protect an identity built on sand. But the man with a strong frame does not shift an inch. He does not defend. He does not clarify. He does not match the tension of the moment. His message is silent but unmistakable. I do not need your approval to exist. This alone destabilizes the enemy. Most men have never faced someone who doesn't react to their push. They have never confronted a presence that cannot be provoked. Their strategies depend on emotional leverage, and when that leverage fails, their confidence dissolves. A strong frame bends reality. Suddenly he looks unsure. He looks emotional. He looks unprepared. He looks weak. Not because you attacked him, but because he exposed himself under your calm. His frame collapses because it was built on assumption, not conviction. This is why Machiavelli wrote that a leader must appear unshaken even in uncertainty. People follow the man who seems certain. Enemies fear the man they cannot decode. Your job is not to speak more powerfully. Your job is to exist more powerfully. You create this effect by living under a personal code. I do not chase. I do not justify. I do not react. I do not fear the void between words. This code becomes your frame. Your frame becomes your weapon. And your weapon becomes the force that bends opponents without physical conflict. When someone tries to break your frame, they expect resistance. They expect defensiveness. They expect visible discomfort. Give them nothing. Their pressure rebounds. Their confidence falters. Their certainty evaporates. The man who cannot move you eventually moves himself into collapse out of frustration, insecurity, or fear of appearing foolish. This is why the strong man wins long before anyone realizes a conflict has begun. He wins by refusing to abandon the world he stands on. He wins because he does not let others define the terrain. The weaker man always fights on borrowed ground. The stronger man fights on no ground at all. He is the ground. A frame is not a shield. It is a fortress. And a fortress is most feared when it remains silent, impregnable, and unmoved. Remember this. Control is not taken from others, it is taken from yourself. Once you master your frame, no enemy can rewrite your reality. And when they attempt to, they collapse under the weight of their own uncertainty. Aggression is the loudest form of insecurity. It pretends to be strength, but it exposes weakness. A man who truly possesses power does not need to raise his voice, tighten his jaw, or invade your space. Only those who fear irrelevance rely on noise. Your task is not to silence an aggressive enemy. It is to let him reveal the truth he's trying to hide. Understand this. Every attack he launches contains a map of his fears, a map of his desires, a map of the identity he is terrified of losing. If you react emotionally, you destroy the map. If you stay composed, the map expands. This is the art. Aggression is not a weapon you counter. Aggression is a weapon you redirect. You let it dismantle him from the inside. Watch what happens when an angry man approaches someone who refuses to respond with heat. He expects escalation. He wants resistance. He depends on your energy rising to meet his. He needs you to validate the story he's telling himself, that he is powerful, dominant, in control of the interaction. When you do not match his temperature, his entire narrative loses oxygen. His aggression no longer has a target to collide with. It ricochets inward. He begins questioning himself. This is where collapse begins. Most people think anger gives a man strength. The opposite is true. Anger exposes the exact place where he is weakest. A calm observer sees everything. The insecurity beneath his tone, the fear beneath his pace, the anxiety beneath his attempt to intimidate. The aggressive man announces his vulnerabilities in every movement. He thinks he's hiding them. He isn't. He's broadcasting them. This is why reacting is foolish. Your reaction hides the information he just revealed. Your calmness magnifies it. A strategic man never mirrors aggression. He drains it. He makes the enemy drown in his own fire. When someone becomes heated while you remain still, an audience, even a silent one, feels the imbalance instantly. People instinctively trust the composed man. They distrust the frantic one. This is biological. Humans evolve to follow those who appear calm under threat, because calm signals competence and leadership. Your composure, then, is not passive. It is dominance in pure form. Imagine your enemy raising his voice, speaking quickly, trying to corner you into a reaction. He believes aggression will overwhelm you. He believes he can destabilize you. He believes he can impose his frame onto yours. But you do not move. You do not flinch. You do not match his chaos. This forces him to confront the truth. His aggression is ineffective. And nothing terrifies an aggressive man more than the realization that he cannot influence you. When someone sees that their loudest weapon has no impact, fear takes its place. Not fear of you as a person, fear of their own impotence, fear of appearing ridiculous, fear of losing the role they were trying to perform. A man who was confident seconds ago begins to unravel. His words become scattered. His facial expressions lose symmetry. His gestures grow uncertain. He senses the shift but can't explain it. He collapses because he is fighting an enemy he cannot see. His own reflection in your stillness. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Anger is predictable. Predictability is exploitable. A predictable enemy is a defeated one. Your job is to make his aggression illuminate him, not you. Every time he raises his voice, the crowd sees desperation. Every time he interrupts, the crowd hears insecurity. Every time he tries to dominate, the crowd watches him lose control. You never needed to do anything. He destroyed his own image with the force he aimed at you. This is the essence of the strategy. Aggression collapses under its own weight when it meets composure. You are not suppressing him. You are letting him sink under the gravity of his own instability. The only force required is restraint. Remember this. When a man burns himself trying to burn you, your calm becomes the mirror that shows him the ashes. Let him reveal his weakness. Let him exhaust his noise. Let his aggression return to him like an echo. The collapse will be internal, quiet, undeniable, and you will not have lifted a single finger. Power is not taken by speaking. Power is taken by shaping what others whisper when you say nothing. Most people believe influence comes from argument, persuasion, or eloquence. They think the one who talks the most wins. This is a child's understanding of power. Real control is silent. It is subtle. It is architectural. You are not controlling their ears, you are controlling their imagination. And imagination is far more obedient than reason. Your silence forces people to create a story about you. They fill the void with their own assumptions, fears, admiration, or insecurity. You become larger in their mind than you ever could through explanation. This is the first law. Say less, and they see more. When you refuse to speak unnecessarily, people start interpreting your silence as strategy. They think you are calculating when you're merely observing. They think you hold secrets when you simply hold discipline. They think you possess power because you do not chase attention. Silence gives them space to project. Projection is the birthplace of myth. A man with a myth behind him is untouchable. Consider how weak men behave in conflict. They rush to defend themselves. They over-explain. They correct every misunderstanding. They panic at the thought of being misjudged. But the more they speak, the smaller they become. Every word is a confession. Every explanation is a submission. Every attempt to clarify reveals insecurity. A man who talks too much exposes his frame. A man who talks too long destroys his own mystique. A man who tries to control perception with words loses control the moment emotions rise. A strategist behaves differently. He controls perception by refusing to enter the theater at all. When they expect a speech, he offers nothing. When they want justification, he gives silence. When they demand an explanation, he leaves the question hanging. This is not avoidance. This is dominance. Why? Because silence creates imbalance. Silence forces them to guess. Silence makes them wonder what you're thinking, or whether you're thinking about them at all. Uncertainty is a cage. People torture themselves inside it. When you do not speak, they begin arguing with themselves. They replay your expression. They analyze your tone. They search for meaning where you placed none. They attempt to interpret a message you never delivered. This is where narrative shifts in your favor. The narrative you never said becomes more powerful than any narrative you could have spoken. If you appear calm, they assume control. If you appear unfazed, they assume superiority. If you appear observant, they assume intelligence. If you appear detached, they assume strength. Your silence forces them to exaggerate your power in their own mind. This is the second law. The less you show, the more they imagine. Machiavelli understood this intimately. People do not fear what they fully understand. They fear the unclear, the ambiguous, the unreadable. A silent man becomes unreadable. Unreadable men become dangerous. Your enemy attempts to define you. Do not correct him. Contradict him with behavior, not argument. A contradiction spoken is a debate. A contradiction embodied is a humiliation. If he calls you weak and you remain calm, he looks delusional. If he calls you emotional while you stay composed, he looks insecure. If he calls you predictable while you stay silent, he looks foolish. Silence is exposure, not of you, but of him. When you withhold words, he reveals himself. His need for validation becomes visible. His craving for reaction becomes obvious. His desperation for clarity becomes embarrassing. And every moment he tries to decipher you, he loses control of himself. This is the third law. Mystery breaks men faster than conflict. A mysterious presence cannot be managed. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be controlled. People fear what they cannot categorize. Silence uncategorizes you. It removes you from their familiar scripts. It elevates you above petty exchanges. It transforms you into an element they must adapt to. You are no longer a participant. You are an environment. An environment is not argued with. It is respected. Remember this. He who controls the narrative controls the room, but he who controls it without speaking controls the world. Your silence is not absence. It is architecture, a design you impose on the minds around you. Say nothing, and watch as they build a kingdom around your quiet, a kingdom where you sit at the center, and they kneel to the story they wrote themselves. Validation is the hunger that weak men try to hide. It is the invisible leash that pulls them toward approval, praise, and recognition. And the man who needs validation is already conquered because his sense of self depends on forces outside himself. All you must do is withdraw what he craves. Most people walk through the world begging to be seen. They want applause when they speak. They want agreement when they argue. They want reassurance when they doubt. Their identity is rented, not owned. The world grants it to them temporarily, then takes it back without warning. A strategist sees this dependency for what it truly is: a structural weakness, a crack in the armor, a psychological pressure point that collapses under the right weight. Your role is not to attack him directly. Your role is to expose the size of the void he carries inside him. When someone needs validation, they reveal themselves in subtle ways. They talk too long. They defend too quickly. They repeat themselves to make sure you agree. They search your face for approval. They wait for reactions like addicts waiting for a dose. All of this is confession, not in words, but in posture, tone, and rhythm. They admit that your opinion matters more to them than their own conviction. This is power handed to you freely. Now understand the deeper principle. Validation seeking is not a minor flaw, it is the foundation of collapse. The entire frame of a validation addict stands on external confirmation. Remove the confirmation, and the frame collapses under its own weight. You expose him not by confronting him, but by depriving him. Do not praise him. Do not reassure him. Do not mirror his excitement. Do not rescue his ego from discomfort. Do not give him the emotional feedback he was depending on. Watch what happens. The moment he senses the absence of validation, he becomes unstable. His words speed up. His tone shifts. He starts trying to fill the silence you left behind. He begins explaining things you never questioned. He tries to convince you of his worth even though you never challenged it. This is the beginning of psychological unraveling. Validation dependence forces him to perform. Without applause, his performance becomes desperate. Without reaction, his confidence dries up. Without approval, his identity enters freefall. He looks outward, searching for your cues. But you remain still. You remain indifferent. You remain inaccessible. And the silence you offer becomes a mirror he cannot escape. When you stop validating a man who depends on validation, he begins validating himself out loud. This is the purest form of collapse, because nothing exposes insecurity faster than a man trying to prove something unprovoked. Machiavelli understood that the most fragile humans are not the quiet ones, nor the humble ones, nor even the fearful ones. The most fragile are the ones who need to be admired. Their identity is negotiated with every glance, every word, every reaction from others. A ruler cannot be ruled by public opinion. A manipulator cannot be manipulated by praise. A strategist cannot rely on applause. Only the weak do. This is why the absence of validation is more destructive than criticism. Criticism gives him a target to fight. Silence gives him nothing. Nothing is the deadliest battlefield. He cannot win. He cannot attack. He cannot defend. He cannot predict. He cannot explain your stillness. And so he begins explaining himself instead. He exposes motives he didn't intend to reveal. He exposes the insecurity beneath his confidence. He exposes the weakness beneath his aggression. And all of it happens without you lifting a finger. The more he tries to impress you, the more obvious his dependence becomes. The more he seeks your attention, the more he confesses that he lacks authority internally. The more he justifies himself, the more he admits that he does not believe his own story. This is how you break him, not by attacking his identity, but by refusing to support it. When a man needs your validation more than you need his compliance, he has already surrendered the hierarchy. You are the evaluator. He is the evaluated. And power always flows from the one who judges to the one who seeks judgment. Your indifference becomes his downfall. Remember this: a man collapses not because you pushed him, but because you stopped holding him up. Indifference is the quiet blade. Withdraw it, and the validation addict falls under the weight of his own emptiness. Let him fall. Some men can only be defeated by the echo of their own voice, and silence is the echo chamber that reveals everything. Competition is what weak men do. Comparison is what powerful men allow. When you compete, you place yourself on the same level as your enemy. You acknowledge him. You legitimize him. You declare, even without words, you and I are equals in this arena. A strategist never grants such dignity. Competition drains energy. Comparison generates power. In competition, you struggle to prove superiority. In comparison, superiority becomes obvious without effort. This lesson begins with a simple truth. The man who tries too hard looks inferior. The man who does not try at all becomes the standard. Most people exhaust themselves trying to win battles that never needed to be fought. They argue. They correct. They brag. They posture. They scramble to prove they deserve respect. Every unnecessary move exposes them. Every defensive gesture places them beneath the one who stays composed. The key is to understand psychological optics. Humans do not evaluate power objectively. They evaluate it through contrast. We rarely ask, who is strong? We instinctively ask, who appears stronger in this moment? An appearance is shaped not by skill, but by contrast. You do not need to be flawless. You only need to let him reveal himself beside you. Imagine two men. One speaks loudly, trying to dominate the room. The other stands quietly, centered, unbothered. The crowd does not praise the noise. They judge the difference. The contrast humiliates the loud man without you ever lifting a weapon. This is why you never compete with someone who seeks attention. Doing so gives him oxygen. Withhold attention, and his fire suffocates. A competing man looks disparate. A comparé man looks divine. Your silence makes his noise embarrassing. Your composure makes his agitation childish. Your clarity makes his confusion visible. You didn't defeat him. You allowed the environment to measure him against you. And environments do not lie. Machiavelli understood this principle deeply. Appearances determine loyalty, fear, trust, and dominance. People follow the man who seems most grounded, not the one who struggles to appear that way. So stop trying to prove your strength. Stop explaining your worth. Stop arguing for respect. All of these acts pull you downward into the mud where your enemy feels comfortable. Instead, stand beside him but elevate from within. When his voice rises, lower yours. When he becomes emotional, become colder. When he rushes, slow down. When he seeks validation, stay indifferent. When he brags, say nothing. Contrast does the killing. What do people see? One man grasping for control, another man who already has it. And the judgment becomes instinctive. They trust the one who needs nothing. Comparison creates hierarchy without conflict. It places you above him without effort, without violence, without performance. This is where collapse begins. A man can survive losing an argument. He can survive losing a fight. He can even survive losing an opportunity. But he cannot survive losing his image. Identity is fragile. Reputation is oxygen. When others see the imbalance between you and him, his self-perception breaks. He realizes the crowd is not on his side. He feels exposed, diminished, outclassed, and a man who feels inferior behaves inferior. His confidence drains. His aggression weakens. His ability to assert himself evaporates. All because he stood next to someone who didn't play his game. Comparison is not passive. It is dominance delivered with stillness. You are not fighting him. You are allowing him to fight his own reflection. A reflection that becomes uglier the more frantic he becomes. This is why you never step into another man's arena. You build your own presence and let him collapse under the pressure of proximity. Your presence becomes the weapon. Your restraint becomes the blade. Your calm becomes the mirror. Let him see himself beside you. That alone destroys him. Remember this: a king does not compete. A king does not justify. A king does not chase recognition. He stands. Others measure themselves against him and fall. Comparison defeats enemies that competition could never touch. It kills the ego rather than the body. And once a man's ego breaks, everything else follows. Let him reveal the difference. Let the world see it. Let him collapse under the weight of his own inferiority. You are not here to win battles. You are here to become the standard by which others are judged and found lacking. The strongest strike is not force. It is absence delivered at the moment they expect you most. Most people misunderstand withdrawal. They think stepping back is retreat. They think silence is surrender. They think disengagement means defeat. That is because they have never seen withdrawal used as a weapon. Strategists know the truth. A sudden absence destabilizes a man more than any confrontation ever could. You are not removing yourself from the battlefield. You are removing the battlefield itself. Your enemy prepared for conflict. He rehearsed his lines. He built scenarios in his mind. He imagined your reactions, your defense, your counterattacks. His entire psychological framework depends on your participation. And so you do the one thing he cannot process. You refuse to participate. Not early, not late, but at the exact moment he expects engagement. Timing is everything. If you withdraw too soon, he does not collapse. He simply continues. Withdraw too late, and he gains satisfaction from the exchange. Withdraw at the precise peak of confrontation, and his entire structure implodes. Why? Because his aggression needed resistance to validate itself. His narrative needed your involvement to remain coherent. His identity needed the conflict to feel meaningful. You deny him all three. This is not passivity, it is psychological suffocation. A man preparing for war suddenly finds himself swinging at air. He lined up his soldiers, sharpened his weapons, gathered his arguments, only to realize the opponent walked off the field without fear, without haste, without explanation. What does that do to him? He becomes trapped in the momentum he created. He charged forward, but there is no target. He spoke loudly, but no one responded. He clenched his fists, but the enemy did not approach. He expects energy back and receives a void. The void becomes his prison. He starts to look irrational because he is fighting with no opposition. He starts to look unstable because he is yelling into silence. He starts to look insecure because he is trying to win a war no one else acknowledged. And the crowd sees the imbalance instantly. Withdrawal shifts the entire narrative. You become the controlled one. He becomes the chaotic one. You become the grounded presence. He becomes the frantic performer. All without a word. Machiavelli understood that the greatest victories are those in which your opponent destroys himself. This strategy ensures exactly that. People do not collapse from pressure. They collapse from the loss of meaning. When you disappear in the moment he needs you most, you remove his meaning. He prepared to dominate you. He prepared to intimidate you. He prepared to trap you emotionally. But who is he dominating now? Who is he intimidating? Who is he trapping? No one. His entire effort becomes self-exposure. Withdrawal weaponizes his momentum against him. A charging man with no enemy ahead stumbles. A loud man in a silent room sounds foolish. An aggressive man with no opponent looks unstable. This is collapse from within. Collapse delivered by timing, not force. Withdrawal also reveals hierarchy. The one who leaves first is the one in control. The one who stays, needing resolution, needing closure, needing response, is always the subordinate presence in the interaction. This is why you never retreat emotionally out of fear. You withdraw out of calculation. You choose your moment like a general choosing when to vanish into the fog, not because he is overwhelmed, but because he knows the enemy will stumble blindly into the terrain he designed. Your disappearance becomes the lesson. He learns that his power over you was imagined. He learns that his tactics do not influence you. He learns that his emotional weapons have no range. What he thought would corner you ends up cornering him. And when the conflict ends without your participation, the story everyone remembers is simple. He fought. You didn't need to. That is how dominance is established without aggression. That is how control is demonstrated without conflict. That is how hierarchy is revealed without a single blow. Remember this: engagement is a gift. Withdrawal is a verdict. Give engagement when it strengthens you. Withdraw when it collapses him. The most devastating defeat you can deliver is silence at the exact moment he thought he had your attention. He expected war. You gave him emptiness. And emptiness is the one enemy no man can conquer. Power is not won through noise, struggle, or argument. It is won through control. Control of yourself. Control of the frame. Control of the battlefield they never realized you designed. Your enemy collapses not because you struck him, but because you refused to play the role he needed. You deneed him reaction. You deneed him validation. You deneed him meaning. And in the vacuum you created, he destroyed himself. This is the silent art of domination. Winning without effort. Breaking without touching. Ruling without speaking. Remember this truth and carry it with you. The strongest man is not the one who defeats his enemies. It is the one who makes them fall on their own.